We have to make sure that no matter how great our training is today, we have training tomorrow. We are consistent with our training.
Consistency and correction at the right point. If we don't correct ourselves while we're learning, then you end up learning mistakes as part of the process. Chunk up your learning. If you make a mistake, you stop, you get corrected in the process, and you start from the beginning. That's what we do in our trainings.
One of the 3 questions as the leader of the organization that I am always asking myself is around training and developing the team. If I'm consistently asking myself that question each week, that to me is only going to help the consistency of the entire organization.
In essence, you're challenging everyone to see the consistency in your delivery and making sure that as a manager or leader in their division, that expectation should be met as well.
Hello, I'd like to welcome you all to the Wisdom of Wrench podcast. My name is Kevin Comerford, and we are in the middle of a 3-part series. We are just wrapping up. This is part 3 of a series that's called The Top 3 Mindsets Needed to Build an Elite Organization. An elite training organization, excuse me. Part 1 was making sure that you've got a mindset that you're a people development company. Part 2 is making sure that you've got the mindset that you want to protect your culture. In part 3, which is the glue that holds all this together, it is the actual fabric that keeps this blanket intact, which is be consistent. So we just built this great training organization. We just put on a great presentation for culture, whatever you want to call it. What now happens a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks from today? We're going to jump into all of that. Before we do, I want to just introduce the co-host of our podcast today, Ray Diaz. Ray has been with us on part 1 and part 2 of this series. Ray, nice to have you here, buddy.
Again, like I always say, glad to be here.
Happy, yes. Also in studio is Mike O'Brien. Mike is the leader of our Champions University, has been a very special person at our organization, very special person inside Wrench. You're going to hear Mike. If you want to hear Mike's story, go back to part 1. It is unbelievable to hear some of the things that Mike has accomplished. Mike is a former principal in the public school district who's now come into the trades and leads Champions University, which is the training arm here at Service Champions. So quite a story. Please go back and listen to part 1 of this series, this podcast. But let's wrap up part 3. Once again, part 3 is to be consistent. You heard me mention earlier about you put on this great culture day. Now what happens 2, 3, 4 weeks from now? Well, the analogy I want is that to kind of put this into perspective is, let's say you just spend tens of thousands of dollars putting in a new backyard, putting in this new landscape in your backyard. It is pristine. You look at it when you're completed, and it is perfect. We all know what's going to happen 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks from now. Weeds are going to appear. Weeds are going to, start to infiltrate. Rodents, maybe a mole's going to come in and start to ruin your lawn. The same thing happens with your training. We have to make sure that no matter how great our training is today, we have training tomorrow. We are consistent with our training. It is an ongoing, just like you need to have ongoing maintenance done on that landscape project, you need to have ongoing maintenance done to make sure that you're training properly. I mentioned Mike earlier. Mike, nice to have you here, buddy.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here, as always.
Yep. You've been a big part of this series. Appreciate so much of what you've shared. I want to jump right in to this consistency thing, because one of the things that we have used at the university is a training method that we learned from a book called Talent Code. Talent Code, written by Daniel Coyle, is a book that has very specific methods and ways to train people in order to build myelin inside of their brain. Mike, I'm going to stop right there and just let you explain a little bit and elaborate a little bit on using a consistent method inside the university.
Thank you, Kevin. You mentioned Talent Code, and that's a huge book that we have implemented into the strategies of delivering our training in Service Champions and Champion University. The way the book picks apart how star athletes, gifted cellists, and people who have succeeded in tennis, and they looked at all these amazing people and said, is there something specific that's unique within these people, or does everybody have these abilities to be the top of the top, the best of the best? And what they found out was consistency and correction at the right point in your learning process is what makes somebody become that world-class athlete or that world-class musician. And so we've built it in. What does that look like? So briefly mention the word myelin. And for those of you who might not know what that is when you learn to do something like finally snap your fingers or learn to ride a bike, your brain has these synapses that connect that tell you how to do it. Muscle memory, right? Every day you don't look at your fingers and say, I used to know how to snap my fingers last week. How do I do it again? You just do it. It's automatic. The more you do the same repetitive process in your brain, the electricity is firing on that same synapses, like a telephone wire, right? Shooting down the line. The more you do it and the more it's successful and the more you practice and constantly do it correct, myelin builds up on it. And myelin is almost like an insulator. It's encompassing that synapses and protecting it, but also making the frequency of the electricity in your brain go faster and faster and faster. So that's why in the NBA, you don't see star players bouncing the ball a few times before they make the the 3-point shot. They just spin around and shoot it, and it goes in. And like Steph Curry doesn't sit there and like, oh, what do I do? He's done it so often. The muscle memory and the practice comes so quickly. So what happens is if we don't correct ourselves while we're learning, then you end up learning mistakes as part of the process. What I mean by that is if you're playing the piano, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and you mess it up halfway through, most times you just keep going through the song until you finish it and be like, ooh, okay, I got to do it again. Your brain just learned Mary Had a Little Lamb wrong. You have to unlearn it. And physically in your brain, to unlearn it is very difficult. So the process is chunk up your learning. And the moment you're moving along and learning something new, if you make a mistake, you stop, you get corrected in the process, and you start from the beginning and go again. So you're always learning it correctly. That's what we do in our trainings. We will train people, we'll go over how to do something, and when it's up to them to do the assessment or in front of a group, work together, if they make a mistake, they know that we're going to say, okay, stop for a second. Here's what I saw you do. You have to course correct it. Start over again and do it correct, this way. That way, learning is happening appropriately and it's sinking in. And that's all based on consistency. Because if you just allow it to just run rampant, people are going to learn styles differently. Or if you don't revisit it in the field, people are going to start taking shortcuts, right? The consistent visiting of learning, expectations, holding people accountable to what we know to be true, and consistently teaching it and revisiting it is what's key. And that's a really important mindset to have.
That's great. That's great. Ray, I know you've got a lot of thoughts about around this. Be consistent. I think it's your middle name. I think it's who you are. I think I've often said this to you. Be consistent is the glue that holds all of the training together. Ray Diaz was the glue that held Service Champions together. And it was because of your consistency. And so you want to talk a little bit about consistency when it comes to just you as a person, but also training.
Well, again, consistency is repetition. Like you're saying, I want to go back to the book because it's about. There could be a comment I shared with you earlier. A comment that I was doing some training, and a young technician asked me, he says, "What's new today?" Like I was going to come in and do something different in my training. I said, no, we're going to get right back into it. It's blocking, it's tackling, it's being in the batting cage for hours, doing the same thing over and over again until you're just really, really good at it. It could be, and I want to hit on the book real quick. Some of that, just if you haven't read that book, it is the Talent Code. These the young talents that come out of countries like the Dominican Republic and Cuba and Brazil with very little resources, very little money, very little anything, yet they come out. Such great talent comes out of these countries because they just did very consistent things over and over again that were done repetitively over and over again, and became so good at it that when they got into the bigger world, they were much better than the average person with had all the money and the glory and everything. They were just super good at that one thing, and that correction and repetition that they were going through. So I think the book is just an incredible piece for anybody who's thinking about setting up any type of training process. But consistency itself in life, in running my business, am I consistent about my trainings, my meetings, am I consistent about what I'm doing when I have a meeting, when I'm having training, and it's being done at a consistent time, and everybody's showing up consistently. Also, the consistency leads the training and the meetings. It needs feedback. I need feedback all the time while I'm training, and so I get correction. The feedback and that correction coming back to that, and always testing and always. Something you taught me, Kevin, years ago, inspect what I expect. I have to go back and make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do, that we said we were going to go through this process and what we trained on, go back and make sure we're getting the results from that training, go back, do it again, do it better from the feedback that I received the last time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. That's great. You mentioned, Ray, the power of consistency when it comes to communication training. Well, I want to talk about that specifically because we could teach these young techs how to come in and, learn it all at Champions University. But then when they go back out in the field, their communication training is so critical on an ongoing basis, as well as the salespeople's communication training and the installer's communication training for that matter. What does that look like? Well, Mike, you can either talk about that or you go ahead, yeah. Ray.
Well, just Mark can pick it up as well. He knows where I'm going here. It's about role practicing.
Yeah,
it's about I think the best tool in the world is having to get into a triad with technicians or salespeople and something like who is doing it, that you're going through a process and you're having to repetitively go through whatever script they created or we help them with, and they're training on that consistently. And Kevin, it's stuff it's again easy to do, easy not to do, and it's we get away from it sometimes because of the resistance by managers or by the staff, the team that looks to avoid it because it is difficult. It is what you always say. It's doing the hard things. It is difficult. It is doing it in front of your peers. But boy, when you do it consistently and you role practice and correct, follow the E.D.I.C.R, and we haven't gotten the E.D.I.C.R yet. We'll share that. But going through that process on a consistent basis, and then again, getting out into the field and inspecting what I expect, making sure they're executing in the field on top of that.
And also on that note too, is that role play is probably looked at as the most like evil thing to salespeople or to technicians. They just don't want to do it. And I think our culture has brought up that we always role play. We always have that triad format. We always make them uncomfortable to be comfortable by throwing in objections they wouldn't expect. Keep them on their game and they polish. It's being polished. And the veterans were like, okay, show these young pups how to handle it, right? So we put those guys on the spot because they're the ones that are like, I'm not in the mood to do this, right? Well, why don't you mentor and show them how it's done, right? Or the new guy is like, hey, you're up to bat next. You're on deck, so get ready. Show them what you've got. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that continuous revisit of being consistent and the role playing and knowing how to deliver it too, but holding them accountable.
Yeah.
And then they deliver. And then they go out and they perform and they come back and they be like, wow, that actually really helped a lot.
Yes.
It's that constant revisit.
So
and I find it always funny on your exit tickets when we have a role practice training, we go through, or there sometimes for hours with some of the young cadets.
Yep.
And it's so funny that at the end, when some of the feedback we get is we didn't get enough time to role practice something. And it just cracks me up, you know, and yet they resist it, yet it's what they want. Because I think deep inside, they do realize how important it is and how much it's going to make them better when they're out actually performing out in the field.
Right.
So should we ever be surprised if we're in a sales meeting where there's supposed to be role practice happening and we get asked a whole bunch of questions all of a sudden by salespeople? What's happening there, Ray? What's happening when you're wanting to get into role practice, but they keep asking you questions?
They seem to have lots of questions at that time of the morning. And again, and we know that we feel it coming, and we've gotten really good at stopping it. You know, it's okay. Stop your questions. You ask your questions after the meeting. Let's go. It's about get in there. Let's go. Let's start. Let's do it now. And it really takes again the courage from any leader to just get in, get going. So.
Yeah. And now, okay, so you mentioned something, and you mentioned this word E.D.I.C.R. 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 which is a method of training that we pulled out of the talent code. It was something that John Wooden put in place when he was the head coach of the UCLA Bruins, and they won 10 national championships in a row. It's E.D.I.C.R. E.D.I.C.R. Explanation. So give your team an explanation about what you're doing today in the role practice. D is demonstration. Have somebody demonstrate what you want done. Okay, and make sure you plan that in advance. The I is imitation. Now, the team's turn is to just imitate what they just saw. The C is correction. So Mike said it earlier, it's this concept of when they're imitating what the person just demonstrated, if they get off track, you've got to immediately correct them and get them back on track. Sometimes it's in the middle of the actual role practice. It's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Get them back on track. Otherwise, you get stuck with having to unlearn the wrong thing. And then the R is repetition. Great job. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And then the ICR just keeps going. Imitation, correction, repetition. Imitation, correction, repetition.
And along those lines too, I also want to bring up a concept of learning that has to do with consistency. And in most trainings that happen, it's the I do. Like, I'm going to do it for you. You all watch me. Now you all do it. But for adult learning to happen, for that older, it's I do. So I do it for everyone to watch. And then it's we do. I would take a student and say, we're going to do this together, and I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to openly have you talk out loud as you're going through the process. So if you make a mistake, I'll correct you, and everyone else is watching. And then it's the you do. Now all of you do it, and I'm going to walk around as the instructor and help those who may be struggling. All the time people do the I do, you do. The we do is one of the most clinical parts of learning that has to happen. And so we skip that. And that is kind of embedded into the E.D.I.C.R process and redoing it again and again and we doing it together.
Excuse me.
That's right. So I wanted to bring that up too.
Great point.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit more. Explain the we do a little bit further, just so I understand.
So I'm going to show you, Kevin, how to tie my shoe.
Tie your shoe, okay?
So I'm going to tie my shoe and you're going to ooh and ah at me tying the shoe. Then I'm going to say, Kevin, I want you to come up and I want you to tie your own shoe. And as you go through and get stuck, I want you to talk out loud what you're doing. So you're going to say to me, well, I take the laces, Mike, and I fold them over and I make little bunny ears and I do whatever. And then I pull them really tight. I go, oh, hold on. There's a step you're missing. Go back to the bunny ear. I correct you. Oh, yeah. Then before I do that, do I do this, Mike? Is this how I'm doing it? Yes. Good job, Kevin. Keep doing it. Okay. Any questions you have where you got stuck or any questions from everyone who's watching Kevin tie his shoe, any clarifying, we're all good. Now it's your turn. Everybody tie your shoe. I'm going to come around. If you get stuck, just raise your hand up. And if you, or turn to a partner who knows, and they're going to help you tie, like watch you tie your shoe and give feedback. It's that I do it first, then we do it together because I'm supporting you in it. And now you all do it together. The learning process occurs faster. It's part of that consistency. But we do is skipped. That part is usually skipped in trainings.
Interesting. Really interesting. So if I'm the leader and like I'm the one that has to be consistent. It starts with me. And Ray mentioned that earlier when, he's got to be the one that, shows up on time. He's the one that's got to have a consistent training plan. You're the one that sets the example for the organization with your consistency. I know one of the things that I used to consistently do, or still do at the start of every week, when I'm planning my week, is I ask myself 3 questions. And it's really around these 3 things. What am I doing this week to train and develop my team members? So that's a broad question that forces me to look at, okay, what am I doing to train the techs this week? What am I looking to do to develop the techs? Well, look, what am I looking to do to bring in maybe better talent as well? Like upgrading my talent can mean training my existing talent or going outside the organization and bringing more talent in. So what am I doing this week to do that? Also consistently asking myself this question: what am I doing to drive and live the culture this week? What's my plan? Well, how's that going to show up? And be very specific with the answer that I come up with. And the third thing is, what, as a small business owner, what am I doing to drive sales? This week, what am I doing to drive sales? That might be in training salespeople, it might be in marketing, whatever it is. But every week, that's always a part of the top 3 questions that I ask myself. What I want to go back to is one of the 3 questions as the leader of the organization that I am always asking myself is around training and developing the team, always around that. And so if I'm consistently asking myself that question each week, that to me is only going to help the consistency of the entire organization. Thoughts on that? Either one of you?
Well, for me, I agree 100%. It's always been about just making sure my time is focused on the right things. That's the planning process. It's easy, as any leader knows, to get lost in all the minutia that's going on around me all the time. If I don't sit down and take the time to take care of those 3: training, recruiting, culture, driving revenue, driving our business. If I'm not focused on those 3 things, they're going to get lost. Nobody else is going to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to make sure I'm doing it. And if I tend to have a plan and I send my plan out to my team every week, like we do, they tend to read it and then they tend to think, how can I be in alignment with that plan? So hopefully it's scaling and it's cascading down through your team and everybody's in line throughout the week talking about, discussing, following up on whatever those plans were.
Agreed. And you're modeling, you're leading by example, literally, and showing that you're consistent each step of the way. And I would say in our culture that we challenge each other in a friendly way to be better always. So in essence, you're challenging everyone to see the consistency in your delivery and making sure that as a manager or leader in their division, that expectation should be met as well. You need to be consistent for reliability, for just leadership in general, and being solid in what you say you're going to do. You talk the talk, you're walking the walk.
Right. Yeah.
Mike, I watch you. You probably have more sticky notes and things around your office. It's unbelievable, all the different screens you have going on. And I think it's important for people to know in training, in learning, in putting training together, for 1 hour of class time, how many hours do you spend in planning time?
About 3. About for
3 to
every
1.
1 hour. Yeah, about 3 to 1.
Yeah.
And so I take pride in what I do. If it's not put together properly, you can't wing training. But I believe a lot of people do wing it because it's frantic paced, and if you don't think it out, and I know there's people out there that are like, okay, I have a training session with my guys in like 10 minutes. Let's see, what can I do? And they pull it out of the air, and it ends up being a nuts and bolts discussion or something, or too many questions, and you lose the whole training time. And earlier you talked about in the other episode about the pucker factor, right? You're giving time. Time is money. Right. You're giving time back for training. Every moment of training needs to be utilized in order for everyone to take advantage of it and to learn properly. And so behind the scenes, I always say it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? Don't look behind the curtain because there's so much going on in order to have that great lesson. And so it does take time. It takes preparation. It takes time. It takes consistency, revisiting the objectives and the standards and talking to the shareholders in your company of what do you want each of these people leaving this room for my training. What do they have to know without any doubt? What do you want them knowing before they leave my classroom? And then that time is well spent.
Is it any different for a CEO, a general manager, a service manager, a production manager in any business? Any different for them if they're going to have a 1 hour meeting every week with their team? Does it not take an hour or two or some amount of time to plan that meeting to make it effective?
It should. Yes. You need to take advantage of that time, or meetings become so commonplace no one wants to go anymore. They're not going to enjoy them. They'll roll their eyes. What's the point? I don't have time to spend listening to so-and-so just chat at us. That could have been an email, right? So it's that's great comparison, Ray. The leaders in the company have to take each meeting as a lesson plan. You're training in a meeting to get to the point, the goal, the objective, whatever it is to utilize and respect everybody's time in the company.
Yeah. What if I'm a manager and I'm not sure how to train? I'm not sure where do I go to? What? I know you said something earlier about make sure you're clear on what the objective is. What would you talk a little bit about that? Like I know there's a whole class you put on to teach people,
right?
But what if I'm a manager out there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to take an hour or 2 or 3 to plan for my training tomorrow. Just help me. Where do I start?
Great question. So the best place to start is you have to measure backwards. So the goal in mind. They're taking this class to learn what? Or I'm having this meeting so that we all leave agreed upon what? And then you work backwards from there. What is it that they need to learn? What are the objectives or the standards? You don't have to have 15 objectives in a 1 hour training. You can have 2 that you drill home so much that they leave without any questions. So it's you don't have to put too much into it, right? Focus on the quantity or the quality of the delivery, not the quantity of the things that you're covering. So it'd be really to sit down and say, what do I need to teach today? Look at data. Data doesn't lie. Look at recalls for your install team. What are we noticing as a trend that maybe our guys are skipping over? That's a training we need to revisit. Look at call center times. Are we noticing we're losing calls in a certain way? That's a retrain, but maybe that's just one objective. So by the end of this meeting today, we're going to learn how to, secure this equipment better. And that's what our focus is. Let's start from the beginning. What is the processes? What do you know about it? And then everyone's leaving, and you could assess anybody on what you just taught, and they're going to get 100% because you delivered it well. But you've measured backwards from goal to the objective, and then in between the hands-on learning, all the different percentages of learning we talked about, visual, discussion, presenting to the group, you tie that all into that. And in Champions University with the managers, we've put together kind of templates of lesson plans. So it makes it a little easier for everybody to hit the goal, hit the introductory part of it, go over the objective, tell everybody what they're learning before you start training.
Right.
By the end of this next half an hour, you will be able to do A, B, C. Okay. And then at the very end, hey, everybody, you pretty confident on A? Yes. B? Yes. C? Yes. I agree. Great training. So it's easier said than done.
Yes. Yeah. Well, speaking of consistency, where does testing fit in all this? And just to make sure that the learning is happening.
Right. How do we know they learned what we taught?
Yeah. And is testing necessary?
Testing can be a one question to see if they learned the information. Our exit tickets we put down is feedback, but it could be a question that they have to answer based on what we just taught. Assessments can look in any form. You could, for promotion within companies, you should have a hands-on promotion and a written one, and some other different people perform differently under different assessments. One doesn't fit all, right? So you could observe in the field. I would advise, hopefully managers are popping in to, surprise, hey, I'd love to see how you do your craft. You're observing. That's an assessment. A pop-up quiz type format. You show up to a meeting at a center and say, hey guys, we're going to go over the basics of install. So let's just have a round group discussion. What is the first thing you do? Like you just check in. It's a constant. It's consistent.
So it's not necessarily the writing, like here guys, let me give you a written test.
I'm going to give you a 10 question test
It could be a
day.
verbal.
Yep. It could be, people are very creative. Draw me the refrigeration cycle. Make sure that you label every single possibility. Write a small paragraph for somebody who doesn't understand the concept before you leave. Hand it to me before you go. Thanks. People are going to sketch it out and design. That proves to you they understand it.
Does every training class have to have training or testing?
There's always a component of assessment to ensure that they learned what it is they learned.
Okay.
So much so that like the way it's delivered also could be before, when you get back into your truck, before you go off onto the field, take your phone out and record you practicing what we just went through for the communication process and send it to me. Like there's different ways that you could assess people that doesn't have to be pen and paper or make it rigid, So there's lots out there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think back to something Dewey Jenkins, who was the founder of Morris Jenkins, and the MJU is the university that they started. He says to me, one of his quotes is, if you're failing to test your students after you train them, it is they're taking that training as either entertainment or putting in time. It's either entertainment, they're entertained, or it's putting in time. You have to assess. You have to test. And so that's always been in the back of my mind. So what you're taking, what it sounds to me, Mike, is you're taking that testing and you're just being creative with it. Yeah. Am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're also respecting the fact that it's not middle school. It's not like, I don't think you know it. Just prove to me creatively that you understand what we spent time on today, because we're learning something to make your craft better, to make sure we don't have a liability on something that you didn't follow. Like we're doing it together to make you better and to also cover all of what we expected within our culture and expectations of our jobs. What would Mr. Morris do, right? Mr. Jenkins do. I also shout out to colleagues at other universities. Shalyn Fry is an amazing educator. And one of the things that I would say for people who want to start a university type program or learning, we have teammates out there that would be happy to collaborate and share ideas to help you get started.
Yes.
And what to do. We're there. Yeah. Part of our wrench culture is we all support each other and we learn from each other. Don't reinvent the wheel.
That's great. That's great. So I want to touch on, before we wrap up this topic on consistency, the importance of rhythm meetings. Rhythm meetings. When I say rhythm meetings, whether that's daily or weekly, monthly, why are rhythm meetings important?
Consistency. Because you're touching rhythm meetings are to ensure, from my perspective, is to ensure that everybody's on the same pulse of what's going on, that you're filling people in gradually versus dumping everything in one giant meeting. Right? You're talking about important topics that need to be addressed in the moment versus calling a meeting to have something major to discuss, right? You're filtering out information in chunks, which just is what adult learning is, right? Chunking things down to learn it properly. But it's very important because consistency with those meetings, with culture sprinkled in, reminders of how we are, who we are, what we strive to be, that consistency is constant. It's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym one day, you're not going to see any results.
Right.
You go to the gym every day for 2 weeks, you might see something. You go to the gym every day for 3 months, you're definitely going to see a result. That consistency and that continuation is going to have results. So pulse meetings to check in with everybody. It supports your players to know that you're always there. They can talk to you then and there. Your nuts and bolts information gets sprinkled out versus a half an hour of itemized boringness, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my interpretation of why it's important to have rhythmic meetings, check-ins, and continuous communication.
And Ray, you want to talk about rhythm meetings for maybe salespeople or service techs throughout the week? How many times a week? What are you used to?
Well, there's different. Let's say there's management, there's service or sales. So on a management level, for me, rhythm meetings they're multifaceted. So my daily meetings were always about what was going on. It was really just touching bases, kind of a pulse meeting, but it was also to find out what was in the head of my teammates, how are they doing, not just a KPI level, but how are they doing emotionally. So it's also an emotional connection every day to make sure they were doing okay. You could always pick up there's somebody in the room having a challenge you could have a conversation with later. So pulse meetings every day were always important to me, far beyond the KPI. I can look up the KPI. I know what the sales were yesterday. So it was more important to me just to make contact with everybody because everybody's busy. Everybody's running around. And then a weekly meeting was always about a bigger project, and the quarterlies were bigger planning meetings and all that. But gosh, to me, I always loved my daily meeting every day with everybody. I would just touch bases with them, making sure everybody's pulling on the rope in the same direction. Sales meetings, being consistent, because that's one thing, especially sales meetings, I find get pushed off so easily because people are busy. And they think that, well, we can just push that off. We don't need to do a sales meeting right now. We're busy. I think it's the most important time to have your sales meetings in a rhythm, making sure you're touching bases with your salespeople, making sure they stay consistent, because when we're the busiest, we found salespeople to get off track the most. They would stop doing the things that made them successful, staying consistent with their presentations and what they're presenting and staying in touch. So, and the same thing with technicians. They have to come in every, a couple of times a week, go through their training processes, because again, people want to put training on the back burner. And I don't believe in that. I think you have to keep it forefront so that they don't forget those things every day that make them successful.
And for salespeople, just in particular, Ray, how many, is it once a week? Is it twice a week? What do you think?
I believe at least twice a week in person. And I get a lot of pushback on that, I got to admit, especially now with Zoom and Facebook or Teams and all that. I think managers tend to want to use that more. Just I've never felt strongly about trying to do or look to do training over. You can have a meeting if you want to have a discussion about something. But if you really want to do a good meeting, get people together, role practice, train on something, you got to have them in the room. They have to be doing the hard work. And I minimum twice a week.
100% agreed, though. In person, there's no comparison over Zoom or Teams. People aren't focused. People aren't paying. It's a waste of time. I mean, obviously, COVID changed everybody's perception on communication and trainings. But if you can get people in a room together, it completely changes the outcome of learning in a better way.
As long as you have a good instructor.
As long as you have a good instructor.
Right? That's prepared in advance. Yes.
Yes. Spends the time.
Back up with Mike a little bit about, you asked Kevin earlier about and a great question. How do I learn how to have great training, all that? Mike does and can share his process, but he did a wonderful, almost all day for all the managers in our company, a train the trainer process, showing us how to create a lesson plan and put material together. And I utilize it all the time. And he knows that I'm always sending my stuff to him. Gosh, it's just find somebody who's a great trainer like Mike that has a lot of great material and I have a binder now because of Mike. He's a great resource. So anybody hearing this conversation, there are people out there. There's Mike, and there's lots of people like Mike that are wonderful educators that can really help you plan your meetings, trainings, whatever it is. Kevin, you taught me all my meetings should have a portion. There should be something in there. We're learning something. I don't care what kind of meeting it is, management meeting, a financial meeting. Everybody should be learning something in that meeting. So,
thank you, Ray. Thank you, Mr. Diaz. I appreciate you.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think we've hit this. Be consistent. I think we've hit it out of the park. I think we're good to go. I mean, I think as far as wrapping up this series and being consistent, being the glue that holds all this together, and talking specifically about, training consistently, preparing consistently, having consistent meetings. Anything else with consistency that you guys want to talk about before we wrap up, and anything we might have missed?
That's a good question. I just say that, we leaders in Wrench and our companies that we're only measured by the changes we make in the lives of the people that we work with. And consistency and these mindsets, those are the changes that we want to bring with our people in order to continue to succeed. Mm-hmm. And it's working together. And I've loved this. This has been a great experience, and I really appreciate you and have a lot of gratitude for both of you for allowing me to come on. So thank you.
Of course. Great to have you, Mike. Ray, you want to wrap up with anything?
Yeah, I'll just add what I've always had to all this when I'm training and in meetings and all this stuff with everybody is find a way to have fun, enjoy it. Find a way, no matter what you're doing. I've said it earlier. I don't care if you're digging a ditch or in an attic or whatever you're doing. You got to find a way to have fun. Have fun role practicing. Have fun. Make mistakes. It's okay to screw up here in our environment. It's okay. This is where we want to screw up. The more we screw up here, the more we learn, and the better we'll be out there in the field going after what we want to achieve out there.
I love it. What a great wrap up to being consistent. Again, this wraps up a three-part series of the top 3 mindsets needed to build an elite training organization. Part 1, once again, I encourage you to go back, is all about being a people development company. Part 2 was the importance of protecting your culture. And what we're doing right now is wrapping up part 3, which is be consistent. So if we implement these things, it's all about, and it always is all about making your future bigger than your past. If you can consistently train your people and consistently develop your people to make them better, so too will your organization get better. So team, here's to a bigger future. Thank you very much.